process is difficult. Every week, hours and hours are spent scanning the wrong people. That's when I found Searchy. Using the Searchy platform, I can create the role I'm looking for, define the company culture, and the type of behaviors we need in a matter of minutes. Searchy uses AI and machine learning during video interviews and compiles in-depth, real-time results. Wherever they are in the world, candidates can now complete their interviews in the comfort of their homes. In a matter of hours, dozens of candidates completed the video interview. Normally, I would have needed weeks to interview all these people. It's incredible. Using the Searchy platform, I can see every candidate ranked from top to bottom, with information about their personality profiles, cultural values, skills, experience, and all of this together with their video and CV included. Searchy focuses on human insights to predict the personality that best fits our company culture. Now I hire faster, with more accurate candidates, and at last, the business is getting the right people. Are you ready to give it a try? The recruitment process.
Hello, welcome back everybody. Thank you very much for sharing your time with us on the stream today. We've got a topic which shouldn't really be surprising to my mind, to really kind of understand that, our decision making is often influenced by some of our experiences and some of the kind of ways that our brain understands certain information. So we're going to be talking about bias in recruitment and artificial intelligence, and kind of some of the trends that we can see that suggest that our decision-making process and our hiring decisions aren't always as objective as they perhaps are believed to be. As kind of computing instruments, we're fairly bad at being objective, right? We like to draw on our experiences, and we like to, or we view the world through the kind of color of the lens with which we look at it. And sometimes that means that our decision making is kind of colored by our emotions or experiences that we've had. And I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing, but what I am kind of regularly thinking about is, in an age where we're trying to teach machines how to kind of think, what are the lessons that we want them to understand, which is why the bias question keeps coming to my mind, because we spend so much time trying to explore, like, what are the things that we are teaching these machines, and how can that impact the people that are either using the tools that we develop or exposed to them, so that we can try and make it as fair, and I use that word very subjectively and very loosely, because fairness is really, again, designed by how you look at the problem or how you look at the situation. So I want to try and explore some of the things that we're seeing, and then rather than just keeping it all really kind of ethereal, I want to try and make it a little bit tangible and try and show you guys some of the stuff that you might be able to identify if you start looking for the data. And you'd be surprised, in fact you shouldn't be surprised, because we keep hearing in the press that data is the new oil and there's more data that's being created than ever before, and it is true. We are producing more data than we've ever produced previously in all of human history, in fact. So if you look for the data, you'd be surprised at the kind of stuff that you can learn from it. But there's also a danger in that. And when we're looking at some of the kind of decision-making of the future, it's fairly dangerous to take an aggregated view of everything. And then the kind of problem of data disaggregation becomes more and more meaningful, right? So if you look at the majority of data which is used for city planning, for car safety testing, the majority of that is aggregated data. It's not disaggregated across the sexes. Now, contrary to some other people's opinions, sex is not normally distributed, it is evenly distributed, which means there are approximately 50% males and 50% females across the world. That's a biological fact. So if that's the case, and we're using this aggregated data which is predominantly focused on men to design cars, design cities, etc., then obviously some of the stuff we learn from that is going to leak into poor decision making, poor city planning, poor car designing. The car industry is quite funny because it suggests that women don't wear their seatbelts properly because they're smaller and have a different build to men. So we're going to go into a little bit about the kind of importance of data disaggregation and some of the challenges that you face when you go into that layer or down a couple of layers in terms of granularity and get closer to the kind of real representative data that is clearly kind of representative of the global kind of reality. So I won't continue talking total nonsense without the aid of some slides. Fran, if you do me a favor, please push us into some slides and we'll get kick-started. By the way, for anyone that's out there that's got something they want to say, want to contribute, help me out, please. As you can probably tell from my kind of erratic speech patterns, this isn't something that I find particularly easy to do without assistance, which is why I use the slides. Last year we did a lot of these streams where we had kind of people joining us, so it was a kind of two people in the stream at the same time. So please feel free to comment, help me out. If you've got anything that you've seen or that you understand or you read into this, please feel free. I encourage you all to contribute and become part of the community so that we can all start looking at these things together rather than me kind of lecturing at people, because it's not really my style and I'm not very good at it. So let's hop into the next one. The first slide here is just a kind of catch-all for us to kind of get on the same page. First thing that I want to make clear is that just like real life and the friendships that we form, recruiting is a subjective experience. There are a lot of people who try to make it more objective. You know, the psychometric assessments that exist out there, the IQ tests, they all contribute towards trying to make the selection process a little bit more objective. But at the end of the day, they've got to match against something. And often, not all the time, but more often than not, the thing that they're matching against can be fairly subjective. So even if you're getting really, really accurate insights into an individual, that's not to say that the benchmark you're comparing against is necessarily as objective as the test that you are being exhibited to. Let's jump into the next one, please, Bud. So what does the data tell us that allows us to understand that there is something kind of intrinsically wrong with the way that we're approaching recruitment and talent selection? There are a few things that I think are fairly good indicators that that might be the case. The number one thing for me is the attrition rates in the UK. So as we go through the presentation, I'm going to try and cite the data sources. If I don't cite them directly, I will kind of point you in the direction of where you might be able to find some of the information. In each of the slides, there are citations so that you can go and investigate this stuff yourself. And hopefully, because this is really the objective of these LinkedIn live streams, hopefully we give you enough to encourage you and make you feel confident to go out and start interrogating and looking at some of this information for yourselves. And then you find something which you find valuable. And then that will encourage you, hopefully, to go further and get a little bit more exploratory in terms of how you do your kind of problem solving and your desk research. So the first thing for me in terms of a marker or indicator that suggests that there are problems with recruitment is the attrition rates. In the UK, according to the Office of National Statistics, 29% of people in 2018 left their job within 12 months. 29% of people left their job within 12 months. So if that's not really, if that's not considered as an indicator that something was wrong in the selection process, when it's such a large percentage, that's basically a third of the people that got jobs in 2018 that left within 12 months. Of that, about 20%, so 6% in total, didn't find a job in the second year. So it's not just that they left their first job and maybe moved into another one. Of all of the people that were surveyed by the Office of National Statistics in the UK, 6% of them didn't go and find another job. So that, for me, that feels like a very, very high ratio of people who are exiting the first job and not finding a job in the second year. Across the board in the US, productivity is considered to be under, or improvements to productivity, is considered to be under a 2% gain over the last 10 years. And if you consider the things that have happened in the last 10 years, so from 2010 to 2020, we've seen the growth of the gig economy, like exponential growth of the gig economy. We've seen tools like Slack, which come out and proclaim to be productivity tools. We've seen much more usage of the internet. I think I covered it last week. There are something like 4 billion people who are currently having access to the internet. It's from, I think that's from 2005 through to now, right? That's from World Bank data. So with all of those things which are supposed to be helping to improve productivity, we're still seeing these real issues in terms of the kind of growth of productivity in the workplace, certainly in the US. And if the US isn't an indicator or a kind of barometer for the performance of the global markets, I don't know what is. And then finally are the engagement rates. So if you look at the engagement rates that are reported by Gallup in the US, you're looking at about 32% of the workforce that report continually being disengaged, I think this one was, with their place of work. Now, if those aren't things that point towards an issue with how we're engaging with our teams, how we're building our teams, how we're hiring and recruiting people into our teams, then what is? What else could we be looking at? And I encourage anyone that's out there that has any ideas to share those so as that we can start digging into them, because a pattern will emerge. I've been trying to form a story in the office recently with the team where we kind of look at one thing in isolation and then we take a step back and we look at it from a slightly different perspective and then a step further back until eventually we can begin to understand in a bit more detail what we're really looking at. And I worry that sometimes I might be looking at things a little bit too close to them. So if anyone else has got any ideas about how we might start building more of these data sets or broadening our data sets so as we get a clearer view of the picture, I welcome you to join the conversation. Gender distribution. Okay, so that's kind of the broad view of the indicators that suggest there are some issues, right? If you look at bias in the selection process, one of the things that I feel is, and it's not just me that feels this, it's a big topic of conversation at the moment, is the kind of D&I, the diversity and inclusion piece, which is, you know, a noble conversation. It has to be had. There are significant problems with how people are selected or people are employed into companies, especially when they come from a different ethnic group to the people who are making the decisions. So if we look at, and I don't mean to pick on Facebook here, it's just one that I'm fairly familiar with from previous experience. But the same story is vaguely true across all of the big four. So across Google, Apple, Amazon, and Facebook, it's broadly the same picture, right? There's massive overrepresentation of males, massive overrepresentation of white ethnicity, and it seems to me like the population is fairly underwhelmingly distributed, certainly not evenly distributed. And if you look at the growth in Facebook over the last 12 months, and if anyone's interested in looking at this, the guys at LinkedIn have built this amazing thing. So they've been working on these tools for some time, and they have this amazing tool called Talent Insights, and it allows you to get very deep into some of the information around kind of migratory workplace patterns, the kind of places of education, the skills that people are recruiting for, and it's a great source for this data. So by using that, and also by looking at the information which Facebook make publicly available, which to their credit, all of the four do make diversity and inclusion data available through their websites. Through Talent Insights, we can see that there was a 24% year-on-year growth in technical headcount at Facebook. And then if you look at the Facebook data, you can see that there was roughly a 7% increase in the female population in the technical team. And obviously, I'm not working for Facebook, and I don't want to pick on them, even though we are doing a lot of Facebook-related stuff, because, as I said, I'm close to it. The relationship in terms of growth across the genders, in the genders and in the headcount of the overall team, I feel could do with balancing somewhat, right? And from my experience, I mean, in our team here, we're kind of a 50-50 gender split in the product team, in the engineering team, and in the data science team. But then what happens if you go a little bit further? What happens in the kind of ethnic distribution, right? So we're trying to disaggregate the data a little bit so that we can see a clearer representation of what the true situation is. So now we're going to look at the technical team, the business and sales team, the senior leadership team, and the kind of macro view of the organization, disaggregated by ethnicity and disaggregated by gender split. So the key story here, as far as I can see, is that senior leadership at Facebook tends to be a very white man's game. And I don't know. Take from that what you will. I'm not saying that they're intrinsically racist or prejudicial, but from what I'm seeing, there is a flavor of, right, and this is my own interpretation of it, but from what I'm seeing, there is a flavor of, listen, we're about ethnicity. We want you to believe that, as the public, we want you to believe that we are a fair place. We believe in the same things as you do. So they aggregate a lot of the data together, and they throw out these statistics about how they're performing on their D&I stats. But when you disaggregate it, it paints a slightly different picture. So I think that the message that I see here is that, yes, senior and leadership roles at Facebook are predominantly for white men. But then if you go and look at the business and sales teams, you can see that actually the gender split there is more heavily skewed towards women in the business and sales roles. And this is an inference. This is, me looking at it and interpreting it through my own lens. But it does feel a little bit like they're giving the less kind of critical roles to kind of different groups, different diversity and inclusion groups, to kind of make the overall figures look a little bit more even. Let's jump to the next one. Okay, this one's an interesting one as well. It actually blew my mind when I saw it. Again, through Talent Insights, and I strongly recommend anyone that hasn't looked at this tool, that has access to it, go and have a look. LinkedIn Talent Insights will give you a whole wealth of information. So what we wanted to do after we looked into the schools that were feeding Facebook was look at the diversity and inclusion data at the schools, because schools are also very good at producing D&I data and releasing that publicly. So after we identified that 17% of Facebook's hires last year came from just 10 schools, right? That's over 4,000 people that Facebook hired came from 10 schools, only 10 schools. And when you look at actually the big four, so again, Google, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, there's something like 60,000 people. Yeah, something like 60,000 people came from just 15 schools, from the same 15 schools. And that kind of, I don't know, for me that feels a little bit lazy. I'm not suggesting that it's necessarily, intentionally kind of prejudicial against people who didn't come from those 15 schools. But it feels like what they've done is they've identified the feeder schools that have historically produced great candidates for them, or great employees who share the organizational behavior that they want to see, that are less likely to display behavior that looks counterproductive. They tend to have the skill set, they speak the same language that they need them to speak, and they just can get on with it fairly quickly. It feels to me like they've learned that, and then they've decided that they're going to prioritize that kind of group, that cohort, which, there are arguments for it and against it. But what worries me from the perspective of Facebook is when you have 2 billion people, 2 billion people using Facebook, and the majority of the people who are developing that platform all come from the same school, the same kind of socio-demographic or similar socio-demographic backgrounds. What are the mindsets that they have that then leak into the product that so many people are using? And that applies across Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Apple. Amazon's a little bit different because it employs so many people kind of retail level as well and operational level, same as Apple. We'll come to that in a minute. Anyway, so what we found when we looked at the statistics, the diversity and inclusion statistics from the feeder schools, was that they're actually not terrible at the kind of spread of ethnicity and the mix of ethnicity in the schools. Whereas Facebook, when they're recruiting from these places, typically are going to hire more white people, more Asian people. So if you're kind of Hispanic or other, and I'm not sure exactly what lives in other, or in fact what lives inside 2 or more, but if you're in those cohorts, in those groups, and in those ethnicities, but you still went to these 10 schools.
We've got a comment.
Oh, cool.
Read it live.
Cool. Hey, Martin. Totally agree with you. Recruiting is extremely biased, even though one tries to make it as objective as possible, compare notes and reflection with others, etc. But my experience from recruiting over 500 talents to my companies is that I often go wrong with skills, but quite often spot on with culture fit. The culture is to some extent the sum of subjective experiences and therefore less biased. What's your experience? Is the bias more geared towards skills rather than culture fit? So the bias is sometimes a little more insidious than that. It's a little less obvious. So it's a good example. So if you've got a hobby, right? If I've got a hobby, so that might be playing golf or computer games or drinking coffee, or I might wear a specific brand of brand affinity. The potential for us to lean into those candidates more than other equally capable candidates is a little bit greater. Similarly, if you went to the same school, those biases can also kick in. I think that it's less defined to one specific kind of category, whether it be skills or culture fit. Although it's easier to justify as culture fit because it's less well defined, right? So there's this thing called the criterion problem, or the ultimate criterion problem, which is the idea that in order to be able to successfully predict a thing, you'd need to have all of the data which is available, all of the information which is available, from sleeping patterns to travel patterns to diet, and it's just simply not possible or feasible for us to get all of that. And so it becomes very easy to justify the culture fit piece, or justify a decision not to recruit someone because they're a poor fit on culture or behavior. On the skills side, because it's a checkbox effectively, it becomes a little bit more difficult to cast someone aside by saying that they don't have a skill that they actually have. It's that much more objective and measurable. So it's hard for me to say that it really comes from one place or another, because I think it's more intrinsic than that. I think it's more kind of deeply rooted in, not in the body, in the brain actually, more deeply rooted up here in how we view the people that are coming to sit with us. And we have made significant efforts to try and diversify, not just on paper, but also at like a cognitive level or a mental level as well. So we have people in the team who we've kind of chosen to hire people into the team who are, they have a different mindset, right? So they'll come in and they'll behave in a very outspoken way, whereas the rest of the team might be a little bit quieter, or they might be slower to make a decision or faster to make a decision, because those different behaviors, those different mindsets, they are and those different experiences that those people go through as well. Those are the things that allowed us to widen our lens and widen our view of the thing that we're doing, so as that we can identify potential problems, we can identify potential solutions, and they don't catch us kind of broadside out of the blue without us expecting it so much. obviously that's still going to happen, right? But the idea of, for me, one of the key values in having that kind of diversity and inclusion in the team is that you don't look at the problem through the same lens all of the time. You have different people bringing different considerations to the table, and that's why I think it's important. Right. So we talked about Facebook's hiring patterns, and it blew my mind when I saw that they were recruiting all these people from the same 10 schools. Like earlier this month, I finished a book by Professor Scott Galloway called The Four. For those of you who don't know who Scott Galloway is, he's like a media guy, does a lot of stuff around like startups, the kind of financial markets. And so with that kind of colored my direction of thinking about, you know, the thing that I was looking at with Facebook. And it led me to kind of start looking at the GAFA, so the Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple stuff. And I was interested to see, like, where are they hiring from? And it was insane to me to find that actually they share the same feeder schools. So the majority of people, like a large majority, 15% I think it was, 15% of the people who were hired by the Big Four, or the Four, came from the same 15 schools. Right, 15% from the same 15 schools. And that seems to me to be something that is going to restrict us from or these companies from necessarily looking at the broader kind of social issues or the broader problems that might exist. And I felt like it was something worth sharing, right? These places that are considered as some of the greatest places to work in the world are recruiting a lot of talent from the same places. So let's jump into the next one, please, Fran. New hire job function distribution of the four. Oh yeah, so this was important to me as well, because I wanted to, after looking at that and saying, okay, so 5% of the team that Amazon have hired in the last 12 months came from just 5 schools, but then 17% for Facebook came from 10 schools. What was the kind of, was there a reason for that was outside of my purview? So I started investigating and segmenting down to engineering and non-engineering roles, because that seemed to me to kind of make a lot of sense, right? That maybe Amazon's workforce is much larger. It's 250 to 300,000 people, right? And maybe that's part of the reason that we're seeing fewer concentration come from fewer schools at Amazon. And indeed, when you look at the data, it does appear that their non-engineering roles are carrying significant volume in terms of the distribution of the kind of roles that they're trying to fill, whereas Google and Facebook slightly less so. Let's go, Fran. Some other interesting stuff that you can get from LinkedIn Talent Insights that I think could be quite interesting for people who are not aware of it is migration patterns. So workplace migration patterns are quite interesting. And just to highlight a couple of them, if you're interested in tracking any kind of company and understanding kind of what its strategy might look like, then there's some stuff you can take from this. So the first thing that I noticed was that Intel had lost a huge number of people to Apple, right? A huge, huge number. So in the LinkedIn data, it's 1,100 people. And then I sort of kind of put it in front of some finance people and was like, did you know about this, blah, blah, blah. And one of them turned around and said, actually, Apple last year, towards the end of the year, Apple acquired the modem business of Intel for $2 billion. So it kind of made me start to think, I wonder if there are any other insights that you can pull from this workplace migration stuff, workplace migration data that might be able to help us to understand what the strategy and what the plan of these companies looks like. It makes a lot of sense, right? If there are specialists who, or people who are specializing in effective computing that are migrating from AWS to Affectiva or from Microsoft to Google, then it can paint a picture of what the intentions of those companies are. And those are things that I feel are important to be in the kind of in our mind as we're going about using these tools. These are not companies that don't influence our day-to-day activity. right? Intel, Apple, Google, and Microsoft are critical pieces of our modern infrastructure. So understanding what they're doing, what they're planning, what they're trying to do, what they're moving towards is important. It is important for us to know what's in store for us. And then all of this stuff got me thinking, how meritocratic is meritocracy anyway? Because a lot of these companies, Facebook, Google, etc., they believe, or they promote themselves as being meritocratic. Go back a slide, please, pal. Yeah. So they promote themselves as being meritocratic. So that's the idea that the people that work there really deserve it and earn it. And I have a hard time with this because I believe that a lot of success is a consequence of luck. I think that it's unrealistic to suggest that just because you're extremely talented means that you're going to do extremely well. So I kind of started looking into some of the information that's out there about meritocracy and whether or not it's something that I really want in my life. And that's not to say that I think that everyone should necessarily be given like an equal chance, but it's certainly to say that the concept of meritocracy isn't as utopian as we might believe it is. And a lot of that really comes down to the stuff that happens lower down the funnel, like when you're younger. So when you look at it, a lot of your meritocratic opportunity is a consequence of the education that you went through when you were younger. And your upward mobility is absolutely correlated to kind of the places that you grew up. There is a lot of data to suggest that geography has a huge impact on upward mobility. So let's jump in. Anyone got any questions, please feel free to share them. I will do my best to answer them. So,
Hi.
hey man, thanks for joining. Okay, so what are some of the problems with meritocracy? Number one, measuring and quantifying everything is impossible. That is going back to what I was talking about earlier with the ultimate criterion problem. The idea of meritocracy requires that we understand all of the merit, potentially, of the person that we are selecting or not selecting. There are a huge number of external influences that are inherently unmeritocratic. And the only way the only way for us to really be able to kind of move towards meritocracy is to discount them from our decision making. And then the last thing, which was something I read from Reid Hoffman, he was talking, or he's talking a lot recently in the last few years about network being more important than merit more frequently than not. And this, for me, is kind of the way, or one of the big influence, I believe, in kind of success, if you consider success as being like capital enrichment, wealth, and that sort of stuff, right? So network, it seems like network and luck are more important for your chances of success than meriting it, right? Being smarter, faster, working harder don't necessarily equate with your probability of succeeding. Let's go. Which then led me to another thing. So I had a little bit of an altercation with somebody on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, and it was really weird experience for me. But as a consequence of that, there are a couple of people who I kind of got on their radar who are looking at similar problems, and they started sharing some information with me. And one of the guys shared this research paper with me that was by the Sutton Institute, and it was looking at in the 1%ers, so like the rich, the ultra rich, I guess, I think. When you ask them what is important for their success or what has contributed towards their success, the majority of them believe that it was a consequence of their hard work. But what's very interesting to me is that very few of them believe that it's got anything to do with their class or anything to do with any kind of luck. It's certainly got nothing to do with their look, gender, or ethnic group, which just, again, it's another thing that I found last week that really blew my mind, and I wanted to share with you that how can we be so, how can we fool ourselves so easily into believing that, you know, we just worked hard and we got this. The average woman in Africa works 15 hours completely unpaid, and yet the 1% believe that they got there because they worked harder than everyone else. What a load of nonsense. It frustrates me. It's one of the guiding principles of why we do what we do at Searchy, because we genuinely are outraged by inequality and unfairness. And we're working really hard to try and produce some ideas, some frameworks, some concepts, and some technology that can begin to address some of that stuff. So if you've got any questions about the work that we're actually doing here, please feel free to reach out to me, to Fran, or to Saika, my co-founder. We'd be more than happy to take any of your questions. So why does all of that matter? Number one is because engagement at work is low, and we should be doing something to change that so that we can become more productive. As that's really what we're here for, right? Is to produce either shareholder value or value to our consumers. So surely productivity is an important component of that, which is correlated to engagement. The next thing is that attrition rates are very high. If attrition rates are so high, it's because people don't like working there or because they recruited the wrong person in the first place. And the third reason that it matters is because inequality is not cool, right? It's not cool. So kind of coming towards the end of this, the gold standard would be to have disaggregated data. So that's data that instead of looking at all of the data kind of together as one thing, we can break it into components. We can say, okay, over here we've got the disaggregated data for gender. Over here we've got the disaggregated data for ethnicity, and we can kind of go down to what's been described previously as the kind of atomic level of that information, so as that we can get a much clearer view. And this is one of the things that I've been trying to build a story around internally, around, you know, if I'm looking at something this close, all that I can see is something this close, and as I move it further and further away, it gives me more data, it gives me more information through my eyes into my brain to be able to understand what I'm really looking at and what is really happening here. So if I see a picture of just a coffee cup, all it is a coffee cup. I can't tell you where it is, I can't tell you if it's in a cafe, if it's in a house, if it's in an office, if it's individual, if it's with a team, if it's social. And then as we move backwards and backwards and backwards and we bring more and more data into our vision, it allows us to color our perspective of what it is that we're really looking at. And get clearer about what the story behind that data is. Now, on the flip side of that, so with more data comes more visibility. On the flip side of that, it becomes much, much harder to manage. It becomes more expensive to store. It becomes more expensive to compute. And it costs a lot more time because you've got to clean it. Like, data very rarely comes in a way where it's just instantly ingestible, right? You have to go through a process, as one of our new guys is recently discovering. You have to go through a process to get it into a format that you can use. So it costs a lot of time to get it kind of disaggregated and into the format that you need to use it as effectively as possible. So you've got these two things, and obviously, like with cloud computing and Moore's law and the storage improvements that are happening, it's becoming cheaper and cheaper and cheaper to store and compute all of this information. The algorithms are getting better, so we're getting faster at using it. But it is still a problem on the acquisition and the cleaning side. And then that leads me into something else that I heard from Lex Friedman. So Lex Friedman is a guy who runs a podcast, among other things, hosts a podcast called the AI Podcast, the Artificial Intelligence Podcast. And he was talking with a professor about an idea that they're working on around fairness, algorithmic fairness. And that, coupled with another book that I was reading towards the end of last year called the age of surveillance capitalism, kind of started making me, as well as some of the work that we do here as well, because people often ask us if we use social media feeds in some of our predictive algorithms, and our answer is no, which I can get into another time. But the next thing that I kind of really wanted to share with you is the idea that in order to get this kind of predictive accuracy or improved predictive accuracy, we need more data. And fundamentally, if we're going to keep taking data and keep taking data and keep taking data, it's going to be intrusive at some point. And I think that one of the things that we're really interested in doing in the next couple of years is trying to provide people that use the platform with some controls and measures so they can say, okay, I'm comfortable with sharing this much information with you, right? This much information, I'm okay with sharing that. And then we can then use the information that you're sharing, that you're willing to share with us, that you're offering to us to make these predictions, and explain to the other people on the other side of it how accurate we think that prediction is and why we can only go as deep as we can go with it. And we kind of think that there's a kind of S-curve shape to this. So, to finish, before I go to take a break, number one thing, if you have to take away like just 3 things from today. Number one, the chances are that your hiring patterns are telling you a story that you're not aware of. It's on you to not just learn ways, because you don't just have to learn it. It's on you to discover ways of cutting that data so as that you can identify some of the patterns that it's telling you, because it could tell you which schools you should be recruiting from. It could tell you that you're doing terribly on D&I if you're a large organization that you don't get that kind of visibility on. It could even offer you ways of suggesting how you might reverse that, or how you might kind of grow that or grow your D&I by identifying areas or sources that people come from that are particularly good and you could do with more of. Training a machine with biased data will only give you more of the same. So what that really means to us, based on what we do, is rather than us come to your organization, so one of the things that we don't do is come to your organization and use your existing teams to give us the kind of norm that we're aiming for, right? We don't want to build a picture of what you have in place at the moment, because if you have had a issue, let's call it, with your recruitment process historically, and then we give all of that information into the machine, the only thing that you're going to get out of that is more of the same patterns of hiring. So for us, we're really interested in the individual and then kind of objectively matching that individual back to some stuff, like a briefing. So it's not just stuff, it's like a brief. But the brief doesn't influence the machine, and the machine doesn't influence the brief. And then that allows for what we're trying to build out, which is really a kind of agile recruitment platform. And do your best to avoid arbitrary recruitment decisions. Just because someone plays golf and you play golf doesn't mean that they're the right person for the job. Just because someone wears, I don't know, All Saints doesn't make them the right person for the job. It's easy to lean into those characteristics and feel like they are, somehow meaningful. I mean, I'm interviewing a guy at the moment. I'm interviewing a guy at the moment who wrote a research paper on Hurricane Harvey. And yeah, I'm definitely creating some kind of value and relationship in those things, which I shouldn't do, and I try to pull myself back from it. So look, guys, that's about it for today. I think the formats we've been experimenting this year are, I hope they're interesting. I hope they're providing some value and some kind of insight that will encourage you to go away and think about how you're approaching your problems. And alternative ways that you might approach them, and some of the interesting kind of options and opportunities that lie inside of the data. We're live every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Gulf Standard Time, 1 p.m. GMT, London time. And the whole purpose of this stream is to try and share some ideas about how you might look at a problem, how you might interrogate a question, and how you might dig until you find something which helps you to kind of validate what your theory is. A lot of what this stream is about is really trying to share kind of confidence in doing that. So if you find it useful, please share the information, please share the stream, please share the content with your friends. Always, always, always feel free to comment, send us a DM, send us an email if you've got our contacts, or give us a ring. Tell us what you like, tell us what you didn't like. And anyone that's in the stream, please feel free to join the platform, Searchy. It's free of charge to create an account and get yourself set up. And I think that the more of you that do it, the more feedback we'll be able to gather and help to really solve some of your problems. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. God bless you. See you next week.
This is difficult. Every week, hours and hours are spent scanning the wrong people. That's when I found Searchy. Using the Searchy platform, I can create the role I'm looking for, define the company culture, and the type of behaviors we need in a matter of minutes. Searchy uses AI and machine learning during video interviews and compiles in-depth, real-time results. Wherever they are in the world, candidates can now complete their interviews in the comfort of their homes. In a matter of hours, dozens of candidates completed the video interview. Normally, I would have needed weeks to interview all these people. It's incredible. Using the Searchy platform, I can see every candidate ranked from top to bottom, with information about their personality profiles, cultural values, skills, experience, and all of this together with their video and CV included. Searchy focuses on human insights to predict the personality that best fits our company culture. Now I hire faster, with more accurate candidates, and at last, the business is getting the right people. Are you ready to give it a try?